Today we have here with us on the Looks Creepy Cool podcast, Stitches and Seams of Time segment, the tremendous costume designer Jevyn Nelms. Jevyn has costume designed feature films, television shows, plays, and commercials, some of which include Paradise City, starring Chris Pistrovsky and Sticky Fingers, The Drummer, starring Danny Glover, The Hudson Tribe, starring Owen Campbell and Vanessa Rubio, and the chilling horror film Bloodbound, starring Eden Brolin from Yellowstone, Justin Davis from The Boys and Boardwalk Empire, and Eric Nelson from 1883 and Nightmare Cinema. In addition, Jevyn Nelms has also styled for Glamour magazine, the Philadelphia Convention Center for Morgan Lewis, and has served as the New York assistant costume designer on the feature film Ovid and the Art of Love. A film I am happy to have also worked on too, as a New York costume assistant, starring John Savage of The Deer Hunter and Hare and Corbin Bleu of High School Musical. She has also costume designed 4 episodes of the Vice TV series produced by James Goldston, Sex Before the Internet, featuring Jackie Adragna from Terrifier 2, and I had the great experience of being Jevyn's wardrobe assistant on that production as well. She was also the New York wardrobe production assistant on The Bourne Ultimatum, starring Matt Damon. But today we're here to talk about the horror genre, including the one of her more recent films, Summoning Sylvia, starring Travis Coles, Troy Iwata, and Frankie Grande, Ariana Grande's half-brother. And of course, the other film she has worked on too, Bloodbound. Hi, Jevyn. Thanks for being here.
Hi, of course. My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, let's kick this off. So in Summoning Sylvia, the character Nico, Ariana Grande's half-brother, wears a totally wicked cape during the seance. He reminded me of Pete Burns, the singer of the 1980s new wave band Dead or Alive. How many rock stars came up in his mood board? And then in the beginning scene of Bloodbound, Eden Brolin's character Carrie wears a very cool gray shirt with a hand giving a peace sign on it and continues to wear tie-dyed shirts with cool graphics. It seems somewhat inspired by the hippie movement and the early 70s and was something a very rebellious person would wear. What was the process like designing for both of them? And did you source a bunch of different decades?
So for Summoning Sylvia, Frankie Grande, originally each character was supposed to only wear one outfit, with the exception of the drag dresses at the end. But he came with a bunch of stuff, Frankie is being Frankie, and he pulled out this super cool cape, and we were just like, oh my god, this is perfect for the seance scene. But originally it was not included in my original vision, nor was it included in the director's vision, but it was so cool that we were like, let's go with it.
That's awesome.
For the tops that Erin Brolin wore, those were from my personal stock. So I have thousands of pieces of clothing, including like coats, shoes, jewelry, in my studio that I use for my films whenever I can. So those pieces were my personal pieces. And her character is rebellious, right? So her father's a cop, but she's a thief. Well, spoiler alert, she's a thief and just generally rebellious. So I really felt like those tops fit her, or something that her character would actually wear.
Absolutely, yeah. Great. Your stock is tremendous. I remember you bring it with you. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something to be proud of. All right. So there are a bunch of drag queen dance numbers that look tremendous. What was it like working with a drag wardrobe consultant?
Well, I was so happy. So my dressmaker, her cousin is a drag performer. So it was totally right on point. And I'm not super familiar with the drag world. Of course, I did a lot of research, but it's nothing like having someone who's actually immersed in that world. So I brought him on as a consultant, and he told me so much. He told me that drag performers love to make their own clothing, even if they're not technically capable really of making like the most glorious, fabulous dress. They will try to do it. So we wanted to make some of the dresses look like they were made by people who were not necessarily like dressmakers or very proficient at sewing. So one of the characters, the military character, his dress, as you can see, purposefully doesn't really look like something you would actually buy in a store.
Right.
And then he just talked to me about what it's like to perform, and the whole world. He really immersed me in the entire world. I'm so grateful that I was able to use him as a consultant.
Yeah, the costumes look very authentic and true to the drag show world.
Yeah, definitely. Because also, and I should have refreshed my memory about the characters' names, but the one that wore like the skirt, his outfit, you can see looks like handmade. So we're going for a handmade look, with the exception Frankie's dress was super fabulous, and the red dress also was something that you could buy in a store. So they were distinct, those two types of dresses.
Right, definitely, totally. So I saw the iconic influences in the drag costumes like Jessica Rabbit, Rihanna, Marilyn Monroe, Poison Ivy, and Josephine Baker, to name a few. How was it designing these costumes, and did any historical icons come up when designing for Bloodbound?
So the mood board for the drag dresses, I just pulled elegant dresses. We just wanted to use those to inspire us. I didn't really use any icons for the mood board. Yeah, it was just the dresses themselves that we found on the internet. And then, I'm sorry, what was the last part of the question about?
Did any iconic research come up when historical icons come up when designing for Bloodbound, the other horror film?
Oh, Bloodbound. Historical research, let's see. Well, it's a story about witches. So every, designer has his or her own idea about witches and what they would wear. These witches were very, they were very stylized, and the director had a personal relationship with a designer that was on Project Runway. So he had already set up a relationship with this designer for him to provide the witch's wardrobe. So we had to do a lot of tailoring because, of course, they were, these were made for runway models. So we had to tailor the witches' costumes. And then in my own personal knowledge, just having watched Bewitched as a child, I'm like, they generally dress, when you think of Agnes Moorehead, right? The one that played Bewitch's mom, she's always snatched. She's always dressed very nicely. Even the uncles are very dressed.
Very
well dressed.
Sharp.
So that was my inspiration. And then we did have the director, though, wanted to really isolate the young warlock, so the star. We wanted, I think his name in the film is David. He wanted him to be a bit not dressed as sharply as the witches. So we were kind of going back and forth because I was just like, should a warlock ever be dressed down? But
that's creative discussion.
Exactly.
Niche. Yeah.
But we ended up, he wears like a lot of t-shirts, but they're colored t-shirts, so not just like white t-shirts that he just rolled out of bed in. They're colored t-shirts. And then in the scene where he meets the parents of Erin Brolin, he wears a really beautiful shirt. It's ombre. It's like gray and it goes to black, and it's like, I love that shirt. So it was a compromise.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Only a costume designer would have that niche and cool of a discussion about, I guess anything like that. Like, what do warlocks wear? Are they like spiffy? Are they starched? Like, only the life of a costume designer. That's tremendous.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Wow. And Bewitched, they're an entire family, and in Bloodbound, they're a family too, right?
Right, they're a family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Great parallels.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I was going to say that some of the costumes that the witches wore were not made by Daniel Vosovic was the Project Runway designer. Wow. Some of them I did provide, and the capes I provided as well, which is super fun. I love capes. Like, whenever I can use a cape in a film, I'm going to do it.
That's tremendous. Yeah, capes are really special and unique. Like, who would even think of one? And so it's always great to have a specific garment that you specialize in and love. That's cool that it's capes with you. I didn't know that, Jevyn.
Yeah. Yeah, they really add like a flair.
Mm-hmm. And some people, when they think capes, they only think like Dracula or Batman, but there's so much you could do with the cape. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a superhero or a
Exactly.
horror monster. It could be like, Edwardian era piano player or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of capes. There are opera capes,
Exactly.
half capes, long capes. So you
Capelets.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. That's so
Hmm.
cool to know the research of it all.
Thank you.
Um, So, as you were saying, it is always great to have a tailor in the costume department. So, to elaborate on that, did you have to make a lot of adjustments on any one of the costumes, either or both of these films? And I know you were already talking about your stock, but did you happen to tie dye any of Eden Bro's characters' shirts yourself?
No, I didn't tie dye any of her shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Tailoring was really super an issue with the drag dresses
Right,
because
right.
the dresses are formulated for a specific body style, which is
Exactly.
what we're going to call a female form.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the men have, what we're calling a traditional male form. So
Right,
we really had to do a lot of fittings with them, a lot of tailoring, making sure that they felt comfortable,
right,
that,
right. Yeah.
there were no gaps or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. And another aspect of that was the shoes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I had
Let's
to make
talk.
sure, like, even when I sent out my initial, because I always send out a size
Mm-hmm.
sheet, I send it out by email, and they send it back, and it has all of their measurements and sizes before I see them, before I take my own measurements. And I put on the bottom, are you comfortable wearing lady shoes?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were going to have to do it. And some of the actors were, I think maybe one or two actually did have drag experience,
Oh, that's
but the
great.
others didn't. But everyone said that they were comfortable, and we had some very, very high shoes,
Mm-hmm.
higher
Like
than I would
five.
ever wear.
Yeah.
But they were like, they took it, they were champions. They just wore the
Yeah.
shoes. It was hard to find the shoes though, and I was panicking actually because of the large size. So you were looking at a men's size 12
Right,
shoe,
right.
which is, can be hard to find anyway. And then,
Definitely.
but in the style of a pump or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But we managed to, at the last minute,
Pulled it
you know,
off.
eBay was
Yeah.
fabulous. Yeah.
Great. Oh, wow.
Hmm.
The dance numbers were so great. They like really were able to groove in all the costumes. So good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
look
That last
tremendous.
scene, oh my God, it was so funny. I mean, they did such a great job of
Mm-hmm.
improvising. And it was so funny that even when we were shooting, when you're shooting, the crew is supposed to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
We kept bursting out in laughter, which is like
That's
a
what it
big no
seemed
no.
like. That movie, it seemed like it was a great time. It seemed like there were a lot of like jokes on set. Everyone was
Oh my God.
close.
So funny. It was hysterical. It was one
Yeah.
of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah. It reminded me, the dance number reminded me of the Rocky Horror Picture Show a little bit.
Hmm.
Was that
Yeah.
like a big topic on set? Did that ever come
No,
up?
no, that wasn't. Mm-mm. But I
Oh,
will tell you though that we had a tragedy on set.
oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
The AD passed away.
As
Um,
this was going,
yeah, not
as
luckily not on set, but like at home.
oh wow,
So it was like I think we were also so sad that we were
coping with it.
happy about the laughter, if that makes sense. Like we were happy
Yes,
about.
yes.
We just needed something to balance the sadness of the AD passing away.
Obviously, yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
The humor in the movie was so tremendous. It just kind of fits perfectly for, passing time away during a tragedy, passing Kate
Hmm.
away, things like that. That's what a
Exactly.
unique story.
Yeah.
So, what was it like designing for Larry and all his friends in contrast to designing for Larry's army-clad brother-in-law and designing for the cop father in Bloodbound?
So the cop father, he was always going to be a conservative cop guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. Uniforms are not my favorite, but almost every film has some sort of uniform, so I've gotten used to it. Larry and his friends, well, so the film takes place over a day, basically, maybe 24 hours or less. So everyone was supposed to be in one outfit, which
Mm-hmm.
poses its own challenges because you're shooting over weeks and you have this one outfit. And, you have to make sure that you have multiples. And I know, like, for example, of one of the characters, his socks show, right? So he wears these pants that are like come up to his ankles and his socks are showing. And, everyone, we did like a dog and pony show, and the director loved everything. And I was like, oh my God, I have to make sure to get multiple socks.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't put him in the same, no one wants to wear the same socks, every
Mm-hmm.
day. So
Yeah.
I had to go to 3 different stores just to make sure to get multiple socks. And then also, because everyone is only wearing one outfit, at the end, when they call wrap, I'm running in the bathroom. I'm like washing out
Right.
some of the tops because I didn't have multiples. Like Larry, that Hawaiian shirt that was his personal shirt. He really wanted to wear that. So I was
great.
like in the bathroom, washing it out every night and hanging it up, and then blow drying it sometimes in the morning to make sure that it was dry. And then you said, the military guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super interesting because my knowledge of military officers is that they want their uniforms to be pressed, like super sharp and crisp, like you can break an egg on the crease. But he didn't want his uniform to be that crisp, which kind of made sense because he wasn't fighting, like he wasn't in the military at that moment.
He had come home.
He had come home.
Yeah.
So we compromised where it was, it was still a bit crisp and clean, but it also had a worn look, a worn in feel, a lived in feel is what I mean to say.
Yeah.
So we like washed it a few times. That's how you just dress something, break it down. Yeah. So we washed it a few times, but we also steamed it and ironed it. So
that's a compromise too, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Well, and were there any interesting thoughts on having an army clad character next to a bunch of drag queens ultimately?
Well, I think that was the way it was written, and I think that was brilliant because it really drove home the differences between them. Like you have this one guy who potentially is very conservative, and then you have these other guys who are not, super liberal, very flamboyant, into the drag scene. So I think that contrast was really great, like the way they wrote it, to be that way. And yeah,
and you did such a great job showing, with the costumes, how different they are. I just thought it looked so great when you first see them all on scene together. It's like, wow, look at that, and it's so rare, I think, in movies that you'd see, a military man standing next to a bunch of, drag queens for flamboyant guys. So I like the rarity of it. It was really interesting and shocking and hilarious. It had a nice sense of humor to it.
Yeah.
So definitely. That's why I wanted to ask about, the design process and that, the conservative versus the non-conservative,
Yeah. I mean, the script was very original, like
definitely.
That was refreshing.
Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm.
So did a lot of historical costume research go into Sylvia's costume as well as any of the characters from both movies?
So for Sylvia, who technically is a ghost, again, spoiler alert, but she is from, I think it was like the late 1800s. So I did do a lot of research. I wanted to make sure to find out what a woman of her stature would wear. And I wanted her to wear white, actually. So that was my original mood board. She was in white, different white garments, just because I thought, ghosts, we want to signal to the audience that she's, a ghost. But they wanted her to wear black, which, is also like black signifies a lot of times like a black hat, like a character that's up to no good. So it's kind of like once you watch the movie, you'll see that that's the feeling you get from her character, is someone who's up to no good. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so we'll do black. And then I happened to find the perfect garment at Alias Rental House, which is in Manhattan in Midtown. And it just, I don't know how I found this dress. Like, even now, it was like a miracle. It fit her to a glove. It was just perfect for the era. And, it was all black, and she loved it. So I was very, very pleased with her dress. And then there were 2 other characters also from that era. It was her son and his friend. And I mean, I love historical research. I do a lot of films and shows that or period shows.
Yeah.
So, and I just love like it was kind of like the outfits that they wore. Actually, some of that was from my stock as well.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
tremendous.
yeah, it was
Unique.
super cool.
That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Yeah, the Sylvia's costume almost reminded me of a costume out of that Del Toro movie, Crimson Peak, which is
Okay.
Victorian, and I
Okay.
thought it just and there's some ghosts in that, so I just thought it was so on point that it looked morose, sort of like how you were saying, like the black cat's up to no good, and
Right.
it really hit the point across. And Alias is so great. I remember we had rented from them during that Vice TV series that we worked on, and they were great when I went back and returned everything. Yeah, I like that
Yeah.
place. It's great.
Shout out to Alias. I've been using
Yeah,
them since I started, and they're really great.
definitely, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you went into this a little bit already, but were there a lot of duplicates and doubles in wardrobe, and what was the maintenance process of that like?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're doing a film where there's only one night or one day, you definitely have to make sure to have your multiples. Because I did another film. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was a party, and it's called the After Party, where it was just a party scene the entire film, and yeah, because you don't want to have to, like I ended up doing, washing clothes,
Right.
every night. You may not
Yeah.
have the crew to do that. So to the extent possible, I use multiples. I mean, it wasn't always possible. In Summoning Sylvia, that the green outfit
Right.
with the flowers, a
Beautiful.
friend of mine who I went to FIT with, he actually has a line of clothing. So a shout out to Scott Smith, to
Wow.
Scott Rich. His line of clothing, he specializes in prints.
Yeah, it was
So
beautiful. I noticed.
yeah, when I got a bunch of stuff from him, it was so nice to lend me the stuff, and I pulled it out, and the actor was like, "That's it. That's what I want to wear." And it was just a cute little suit. I mean, it's like shorts and a top, and it's green with flowers. And then at one point, he had like a pink flower in his hair, so it just worked out perfectly. I'm so happy about that. But unfortunately, I didn't have multiples of that. It was not possible. So that was one of the things. I'm in the bathroom, and I'm like scrubbing it out, But that's part of the job,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that Scott Rich design. I thought the little prints on it over and over again were so beautiful with the green. It was such an interesting color combo.
Right.
It's really unique, and the character was so unique. So
yeah,
it just worked really well.
Yeah, I agree totally.
So what was it like on these horror films without an intimacy coordinator? And did working with an intimacy coordinator on other projects improve the experience?
Yeah, so both of these films, I mean, for Summoning Sylvia, we had that scene, with the two guys, the nudity scene. So, I mean, they were great, I mean, as a designer, I know what to put on them. So there are things that they call them cock socks that, the men can wear that makes them look completely nude, but they actually have a covering on their private parts. But yeah, that was great. I mean, and the one character, the young guy, he runs out of the house completely nude. And we were like, do you feel comfortable doing that? And he was like, sure. He was a great sport. He like ran out of the house, and I was right there. So he wasn't nude for a long time. I like had a bathrobe, and I like covered him with a bathrobe or whatever. But and then with Bloodbound, yeah, that scene was a difficult scene because she gets raped
right.
by a warlock. And in that point in her career, she hadn't really done a whole lot of movies, and it was at night. And I remember the AD, she was like, okay, Jevyn, you can go now. And I'm like, no, I know that when you're doing a nude scene, there has to be someone from the wardrobe department.
Right.
At that point, there was no such thing as an intimacy coordinator 10 years ago. So I was there making sure that she felt comfortable, that she felt covered when she needed to be covered, she didn't feel exposed, and
right.
Definitely making her feel comfortable. And I think now that we do have intimacy coordinators, that is their point, to make sure that the actor is not forced to do something they don't want to do, that they're not exposed more than necessary, because you do still have your crew around them, So I'm happy about the role of intimacy coordinator. I know when we worked on the Vice film, there
Yeah.
was a really great intimacy
Evelyn Pope.
coordinator.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I liked her a lot. She was really great. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a difference. I'm happy that they've. I think it's very important.
I agree. I think it's so much better that that occupation and role on set exists now.
Hmm.
It just made things easier and nicer, I guess.
Yeah, and also
Less
safer.
callous.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and safer for everyone in case of allegations. Then you have someone there to make sure that who can say no, that did not happen, or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
if it ever gets to that point. Yeah, I know I did another film. I'm trying to remember the name, and we had a scene where the guy had to be nude, and I had this whole cock sock, but the director didn't even want him to wear that. So at the
Oh.
last moment, he was literally like exposed, and I'm like, dude, do you feel comfortable? And he was like, yeah, but it's hard for the actors to say no. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want to mess up your relationship with the director. It depends on how much capital you have,
Right, right.
how much leverage you have. So yeah, but she was like, no, let's just go for real, and I was like, oh, okay. So yeah.
Wow, yeah. I
Mhm.
I imagine that having an intimacy coordinator makes it much easier to say no. And that is
Exactly. Oh,
great.
they'll advocate, like
Yeah.
the one we work with. They will advocate for the actor for sure. That's their role, to advocate for the actor.
Yeah, definitely. That's great that they exist now.
Hmm.
And then what was it like costume designing for horror films as opposed to other genres of films?
So when you're designing for a horror film, you always have to think about, reading the script, the blood and the
Mm-hmm.
violence.
Right.
Because if you're dealing with
Squibs.
blood, then for sure you're going to have multiples. There's no
Yes.
getting around that. And it really, actually, the idea of blood is a bit technical, because you want to know where are they bleeding from, how heavy is the blood. Then I'm talking with the directors. What color blood do you want? A very, very dark, slick blood? Do you want a lighter color blood that's you know a little more translucent? So there are a lot of, and then there's all these types of blood that you can buy. So it's actually quite complicated.
Right.
And then of course you want to, other than the blood, you have weapons, and even in Bloodbound, we had some pretty gory scenes with the
Yeah,
heart,
definitely.
reaching in and pulling out the heart, the arm getting torn off. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a wonderful production designer who really was very, very, very talented
Oh,
in
that's great.
making some of those things. And then we also hired specialists who, for
Mm-hmm.
example, could make something that looked like a heart, like a
Oh,
bloody
wow,
heart.
that's tremendous. What was
Yeah,
that
we
like
hired we hired
working with them?
specialists for that. But that was great. Like when he tore off the arm, I was like, oh my god. And when it's just when you're shooting it, you don't realize how realistic it does look at the end. It was like, wow, this
Mm-hmm.
looks really great. I mean, I thought it looked great.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Totally.
Yeah.
So, since this is the Looks Creepy Cool podcast, what is the creepiest thing that has ever happened to you? And what is the coolest thing that has ever happened to you?
So I think the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me, I used to live in Park Slope, so I lived in like not a brownstone, but a row house, or whatever you call them,
Mm-hmm.
a brick, one of those brick,
Brick and mortar.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a
Walk.
3-story brick building. There were 3 different apartments. It was very old, so it
Mm-hmm.
had been, I think it was built in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, one night, I mean, I think that there were ghosts in there, but and one night I was sleeping and I felt something pinch my toe. It was like something under my bed, like pinched my toe, and I was like, "Oh, that must be the ghost." I mean, I wasn't, I didn't like cry or get up or run or
Right.
anything. I was like, "Whatever, like, okay, I can deal with that." And then another time, I swear I saw a woman in white, which is where I got my idea of the ghost being in
Sylvia.
white, in
Yeah.
like this floaty white dress, like in the apartment at
Oh,
night.
that's so
And
scary.
again, I don't know if it was just because I was so tired. I was like, "Okay, whatever, like, I can deal with
Yeah.
that if you can deal with it." So,
Mm-hmm.
but that
Yeah,
was definitely, and it happened because it happened in the same place. I do feel like it was real, like those
definitely.
two things happened in the same apartment at different times. So that's why I'm like, okay, so that's something that actually did happen.
Yeah. And then the coolest thing.
In terms of like on a show or
just in general.
In general, the coolest thing. What? I mean, I went to Iceland once. I lived there for like a month, or I stayed there for a month, and that was just super cool. Like I was working because I knew my host. She was a friend, so I lived with her, and she used to tend to gardens of diplomats. So I was helping her, and I got paid, and then she would sell like dried fish. We go house to house and sell dried fish, and then I had so many jobs when I was there. I was so grateful to be making money in this foreign country,
Yeah, definitely.
And then I was on this it looked like we were on the moon. I don't even know where in Iceland it was, but there were these great dunes of like dirt. And the person who hired me, he was picking these specific rocks. I don't know what he used to, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to help me? You can get paid." So I was up on this like dune somewhere in Iceland, like picking rocks. So I would say my coolest experiences have been in Iceland when I was making money doing those various things.
That's so cool.
Thank you.
And fish is big in Iceland, right?
Oh yeah,
important part of culture.
Yeah. And it was so funny because I was, me being African American, I'm knocking on the doors and they're opening the door. They're like, oh, like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm holding up the fish, and she taught me how to say it, in Icelandic, and that was super cool.
That is cool. Yeah. Do you remember how to say it? Do you want to try to say it?
No,
you don't?
Wow. So long ago. Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take to learn it? It's complicated language, right?
It is, and I just learned phrases.
Okay.
Yeah, just phrases. I mean, my sister had lived there. She lived there for a couple of years, and she started actually learning the language, but I just learned the phrases, just enough to make sales and do what I had to do. And also the people generally speak English.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They generally, learn English as well, second language, so.
Wow. That's so unique.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and I want to just give a shout out to my dressmaker so she was the one who helped me, who did the tailoring for Bloodbound.
Wow.
And she also worked on Summoning Sylvia. And we've worked together. Anytime I can hire someone to be a tailor, I will hire her. So it's been years that we've worked together on plays and film. Her name is Sarah Scott.
Okay,
Sarah Scott Cardenas. So I want to give her a shout out.
Yeah. Tailors are always great. They're so important. I have so much respect. I do tailoring too. It's like, so important.
It's so important, and I always, when I'm, interviewing or in pre-production, I'm always like, no, I have to have someone that I can call, especially for men's suits.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than a suit that is ill-fitting. Even when I'm watching TV and I'm watching movies, and I'm like,
it shows.
They should have had that tailored. So that's one thing that I'm like a stickler for.
I worked on a production of Don Giovanni, put on by the Moray Opera here on the Upper West Side, and part of my job was tailoring men's suits like every day, and I got even better at it. But I remember thinking, oh no, what if something here doesn't look right, like as I'm doing, as I'm pinning and thinking about it. So yeah, they were on point. We got compliments and everything, but I remember thinking, boy, was tailoring these suits good. It would have been bad if they weren't tailored. It would have looked sloppy.
Nothing worse than a suit that is either too tight, you can see it buckling in the back, or the sleeves are too long. Yeah. Now that I know you can do men's suits, I will be calling you.
Oh, thanks, Jevyn. I look forward to that. Yeah.
Great. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, great. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to shout out my latest film that is being released next month. It's called Lost Nation. Okay. And it is a historical feature film about Ethan Allen and his quest to found Vermont, because there was a big kerfluffle about Vermont versus New York and whose land, who owns which. And it also includes Lucy Prince, so a real person, Lucy Prince, who was the first, she was the first African woman to represent herself in court in the late 1700s.
Wow.
Because her family was being harassed. So it meshes both the Ethan Allen story with the Lucy Prince story, and it all takes place in late 1700s, and we shot it on Nantucket Island as well as Vermont, and just the amount of research and just sourcing the clothing for that was tremendous, very challenging. But the trailer is out, so you can go to you can follow me on Instagram, which is my name, Jevyn Nelms, and the trailer is in the bio, and I'm going to be putting it on my website, which is also my name, jevynnelms.com.
Great. I look forward to more of your period pieces and
Thank
more
you.
of your work. I know you're so great with the research. I remember on Ovid we had to, really, and I loved working on that.
Yeah.
With the research, it was so moving. Remember, purple was a big thing with the glass system and.
Yeah, shout out to the costume. I was the assistant. Shout out to the costume designer, Nikia Nelson.
Nikia Nelson, yep. That was great production. Yeah, shout out to her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess that's it. Thanks for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, this is great anytime, and I look forward to even more of your movies.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.